everything was going wrong. I had another Christmas of being drunk, another New Year's of being drunk. I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning covered in blood and freezing cold. And I was so ill at the end of it. I'd been prescribed antidepressants. They doubled my dose a week before. And I just think I went psychotic that week. And I somehow got home and I thought, I'm never drinking again, ever. I felt so ill. And 2 days later, I was back drinking again. I didn't even give Dry Jan a go. I thought that's just pointless. Don't just do it for the fad or the trend of Dry January. You obviously want to change something, right? So what benefits it gives you? You know, like, are you feeling more motivated? Have you got more energy? Are you sleeping better? And by the end of Dry January, don't think, oh, well, that's it, I can go down the pub. Just think, can I do another week? I proved that actually it doesn't matter how old you are, you can turn your life around, because the last 6 years of my life have been absolutely incredible. And I feel better now and healthier now than I did in my 30s. I just don't want to drink again. Yeah. And that, I say it with all my heart, I do not want to go back there where I was. I do not want to taste alcohol. I don't want to feel how I did. Yeah. I've genuinely moved on. And I always compare it to leaving a toxic relationship, a narcissistic relationship. That's how I frame it, right? And 6 years on, why would I want to go back there?
Welcome to School of Rock Bottom with Oliver Mason. I'm an actor, a voiceover artist and a recovery coach who's been sober 9 years. And I know firsthand that rock bottom can be the greatest teacher and the springboard for a beautiful life. And as you know, I interview fellow creatives and all inspiring people that have hit rock bottom, survived and thrived. This is a podcast of hope and how to get out of the darkness into the light. And that's why I'm so delighted today, because I've got the delightful, wow, I nearly tripped up on my words then. I'm so excited. The delightful David Wilson, aka Sober Dave, in the studio.
Hello, Oliver. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I got so excited. I was like, didn't know what to do. Now, if you don't know who Sober Dave is, I'd be surprised if that's true. You will do now. So a very quick bio before we just jump straight in. So today I'm joined by someone who has become one of the most influential voices in the recovery world. Dave Wilson, better known as Sober Dave. A trauma-informed alcohol recovery specialist, inspiring public speaker, and host of the hugely successful One for the Road podcast, Dave has amassed 138,000 followers on Instagram for a reason. For 40 years, alcohol ruled his life. Now nearly 6 years sober, Dave is on a mission to help others break free from a toxic relationship with alcohol. Whether sober curious or suffering with extreme alcohol use disorder, through his coaching, groups, and honest conversations on his podcast, he's changing lives and reshaping the way we think about recovery.
Wow, should we leave it there then and cut?
We can go home now. What an intro though, eh?
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Ollie. Thank you very much.
I'm so grateful that you've come down and travelled to see me today.
Yeah.
I think you know what I'm going to start with. We're going to start with a rock bottom moment of your choosing, and then from that, we're going to get into the hope, the light.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, rock bottom was today when the trains were delayed because we've had 1 millimetre of snow on the ground up there. So, no, seriously though, I think my rock bottom, I've had quite a few, to be honest, after 40 years of drinking, that you'll find out later on how bad that got. But was in 2018, I had a really terrible year. It was one thing after the other. And I had an argument indoors and got in my van, drove straight down to the coast, south coast, because for some reason I found the seaside quite therapeutic. But I went straight in the bar on the pier, ordered 3 pints of Peroni and started drinking them. And then I spent 4 days basically living rough because it was an Easter weekend. There were no hotels, so I spent all day in the Witherspoons, made a load of fake friends, and then had this romantic idea of looking at the stars and looking at the sea at midnight with a bottle of vodka. And it wasn't romantic when I woke up 4 o'clock in the morning covered in blood and freezing cold. And my phone went flat, and I just spent, as I said, 4 days. And I was so ill at the end of it. I'd been prescribed antidepressants. They doubled my dose a week before. And I just think I went psychotic that week. And I somehow got home And I thought, I'm never drinking again, ever. I felt so ill. And 2 days later, I was back drinking again.
Wow.
You know, I didn't learn a lesson from that one. And it was a few months after that I finally came to the decision that I had to end.
Wow. What made you come to that decision?
I'd had enough, mate. And I know people say I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, but genuinely, my life was such a shambles. That 2018, it was a catalogue of things that went wrong. And my mum died in the October, and I had money taken from me from a builder. My health was so bad. I was 21 stone then. Everything was going wrong. And I had another Christmas of being drunk, another New Year's of being drunk. And I got a text from a friend on the 7th of January. I didn't even give Dry Jan a go. I thought that's just pointless because what's the point if I'm going to start drinking again? And it was the way the text came through. I was hungover again and miserable, depressed, sitting in traffic. And it read, "Hi, Dave, would you like to join me for 3 months to stop drinking?" And I literally burst out laughing. I looked at it and I was like, you don't even know what I'm going through. I can't even get up 3 days. So where have you come up with this idea? But for some reason, it was the timing, the way he framed it. He didn't say to me, "Dave, mate, you look absolutely diabolical. You need to stop because everything's going to be ruined." It was, "Let me support you."
Wow.
You know, join me. It was that framing that made a difference. And throughout the day, I started to think about it. Oh, I wonder what I would look like in 3 months. I wonder how I'd feel. I wonder what my life would look like. I started asking myself these questions and it actually excited me. So I messaged him about 5 o'clock and I said, "Are you in?" And honestly, this guy's never home. He does a lot for the church. He's a busy man. And he said, "Come and see me." And I knocked on his door. He opened the door and he was standing there like he's a big man. And I just shook his hand. It was like a door to the universe was open for 12 hours. And I said, "I'm in." And I walked out and I saw a neighbour. We lived in like a posh Brookside then, you know, a few celebrities around there and whatever. And he said to me, "Oh, the footy's on tonight, Dave. Do you want to have a few beers?" I said, "I don't drink."
Wow.
Literally,
right,
after
wow.
40 years. And I didn't even know what I was doing. But the ironic thing is that if Piers wasn't in, if I'd have texted me, says, "No, I'm out tonight," I'd have probably drank.
Wow.
And my life would be, I doubt if I'd be here, to be honest. So that was the turnaround.
Wow. I mean, that's so incredibly powerful. That, I mean, how did you know Piers? What was your connection?
He was a neighbour. He was a friend. Yeah. He lived kind of over in the corner of this close that I lived in. And he's one of these people that meet you for the first time and they tell you something about your life and you go, "How have you found that out?" But he's got great intuition. And I think he knew that if he said to me, "You look terrible, you got to stop drinking," I would have put my middle finger up and gone, "I'm going to drink more now."
Yeah, I was like that too.
Yeah. I don't, you know.
But he said, "Join me on something that I'm doing."
He wasn't even a drinker.
Right.
But he said, "How do you feel like joining me?"
Yeah.
And so we started exercising. He was doing a London to Paris bike ride in September. And I said, "I'll do it with you." And he looked at me, bearing in mind I was 21 stone. And he said, "Well, let's start with the training." So we got a like rolling road thing, a turbo trainer in his garage. And I used to get up 6 o'clock every morning, do an hour on the turbo trainer. So that would start my day off really well. I'd be more mindful what I ate in the day. I start to lose a bit of weight. I start to sleep better. I started to look better, feel better. And that really inspired me to carry on. But I remember this part. It was 6 weeks in that I saw the local pub in Wandsworth over in the corner. And I thought, where am I going to be in 6 weeks' time? Am I going to be going back in there doing the same thing as I was doing 6 weeks before that? And that is when I decided, I'm done now. I'm done.
It's amazing that you were able to play that tape forward and see such a positive outcome.
Yeah.
Because so many times on my recovery journey, it was always a worst case scenario, but you started to really get that hope, you know?
I got enough out the first 6 weeks to see a change.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to go back there. I just didn't want to go back there. And I could see, I suppose, a light at the end of the tunnel by doing those 6 weeks because I put the work in. It wasn't just day count, and it was actually listening to the podcast, reading books, educating myself, being part of a community. I started to go to AA and it didn't quite work out. So I went to an event.
Yeah.
I went to a retreat in Cornwall for a few days. And part of that was a silent retreat, which gave me a moment to really reflect on my life.
Yeah.
And it kind of all fitted in, as I say, it was like that door of the universe saying, here we go. Bearing in mind, my mum had died recently from that. And it's like, I genuinely felt she was with me throughout that period.
Yeah. What helps you stay stopped? Because that was obviously an amazing start, having that period of time and being able to look forward. You sort of referenced that AA didn't quite work out for you and the retreats and stuff. You're nearly 6 years. I mean, I know it's a big question, but a lot of people are great at stopping, but not so good at staying stopped.
Yeah, it's a great question.
What would you attribute to that mostly? Or was it a combination of lots of things?
Combination, being part of a big community. So I went to an event that Jane Lily Grace held, and there were some speakers there, William Porter, Claire Pooley, and I met them after. And it was everything that I felt AA wasn't. And that's not me disrespecting AA, because I know they help millions of people, right? But it didn't work for me.
Sure.
But it felt quite normalised there, and I was just chatting. And I remember getting on the train after thinking, God, there are normal people that are sober.
Yeah.
Because I was this typical person that stereotypes sober people as boring, work in the library. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but do you see what I mean? It was like I'd only ever been around drinkers, and I remember doing that, and I started to do a course and self-development and mindfulness, and that wasn't like meditation, that didn't work, but a bit of breath work, and I started to invest in myself.
Amazing.
And all I'd ever done for 40 years, the only investment was drinking. So to invest in myself and start.
All I needed was my beer money. As long as I got my beer money,
well, that was right, and that's how it affected my career as well. Like as long as I got enough to pay the bills and get drunk, and I started to kind of build up my self-esteem and self-worth.
Yeah. And
then I started my Instagram page, and I started to tell my story. And obviously, I'm from South London. What you see is what you get, kind of bloke, and people kind of like that. So people started messaging me saying, oh, I'm really struggling myself. How you doing it? And that encouraged me as well, because I would help them. And the rest is history. That handshake, I don't even remember my last drink, because the night before I hadn't planned it.
Right.
I hadn't thought enough's enough. Tomorrow I'm stopping. I just got up that day feeling like hell, and probably had it in my mind to feel like hell the next day as well.
Yeah. I think what's really important there, I mean, I heard you say on another podcast when someone asked you if you got any advice for anyone who's curious about stopping drinking, and you said, just start, just go for it, jump in. And it's almost like you didn't overwhelm yourself, kind of, well, maybe you did say I'm going to give up forever, but you were given this sort of 3-month challenge with your friend, and that then gave you the platform to kind of see the benefits, obviously get that, a bit of clean time, a bit of dry time, to then actually go, this is something that I can do going forward. And I think that's particularly poignant with this podcast dropping around just before dry January or the day before. And a lot of people will be listening and watching this in dry January. Would you say then that dry January sort of serves that purpose as well, that it's a month that you can kind of use as a bit of a foundation to kind of then go on a bit of a journey like you did from?
Yeah, I mean, dry January's been around a while now, and I think it's an ideal time of year because everyone's sick to death of drinking, and like Christmas parties start in November now, don't they?
Yeah.
And they go all the way through Christmas, and then they got the New Year, so it gives an ideal space for people to try it without being judged.
Yeah.
Because you give up in March, right, and you say to your mate, "So I'm not going to drink now for a month." They go, "What are you doing? What's the matter with you?" So I think it's ideal for that, but it's also a good time to reflect on why you're doing it. Don't just do it for the fad or the trend of dry January. You obviously want to change something, right? So use it to your benefit by exploring as much as you can what benefits it gives you. Write a journal down. Be mindful of how you're feeling. Like, are you feeling more motivated? Have you got more energy? Are you sleeping better? And by the end of dry January, don't think, oh, well, that's it, I can go down the pub. Just think, can I do another week?
Yeah.
Explore it, I think.
Do you think a lot of the benefits then, I mean, I was so drunken out there that a day of the week or a month wouldn't have made any difference, if I'm honest with you. But I know for a lot of people, it's huge, and a great starting point. Do you think that's the main reason why? Because it's a month where the stigma is being dropped because everyone's doing it, and so that gives you a little bit of added confidence. Do you think that's the main advantage of it?
That's one of the main advantages of it, because you're right with the stigma, because it's the only drug you have to justify not having. Yeah. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I think it's got to change. And, you know, I'm an ambassador for Alcohol Change UK, and we work quite often with the anti-shame campaign. Yeah. And, you know, destigmatise it and make it more of a normal conversation. You know, I worked with someone recently, and they have complex PTSD. And she's worked with 6 psychotherapists, and only one mentioned about stopping drinking. Right. It's crazy because it's so socially accepted, isn't it?
That's right.
And it's just, we got to keep banging the drum and getting the conversation out on podcasts like this to just destigmatise it, because it is a highly addictive drug after all, isn't it? And it wrecks millions of lives every year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes all mental health conditions worse, as far as I can see.
Does.
There's not one that... I mean, I used to drink early on because I thought it would help with my anxiety, and then I got diagnosed with panic disorder five years later. So, you know, it's such a temporary kind of fix. I think there'll be a lot of people listening and watching this that will know your story really, really well, and there'll be some people that don't at all. But I think we have quite a lot in common in the sense that, you know, it started off as fun. I know there was an event in your teens where I think your mum left and it escalated, and you often talk about that relationship changing, you know, that it was a friend one minute, then it was a best friend, then it was a lover, then it was toxic. And was it a similar progression to me in the sense that, you know, I was a weekend drinker and then the weekends just got longer, and I think at the end you were doing a litre of vodka, which was similar to me. So similar kind of
progression. It was few beers, started Foster's, 2 cans of Foster's, go home and the ceiling was spinning around. And then it was, I never really started drinking indoors until my early 30s, when someone asked whether I was an alcoholic in a pub. And I'm quite a sensitive person, right? And I remember thinking, I don't know what that even is. Like, because we all think about the brown bag under the bloody bridge, don't we, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I thought about it, and I thought, well, I've been spending a lot of time in the pub. Like, I used to do the full session, go in after work and stay till closing. And then I thought, right, okay, I need to rein this in. But I realised shortly after that I couldn't rein it in. So what I did, I started buying some takeouts from the offie over the road. Right. And back then it was Diamond White. They had it on offer. Yeah, like battery acid, right? It really is. And it was 8.4%. So I'd start with 4 cans, and then I thought that ain't enough. So then I bought 8. Right. And then I started in one of the supermarkets was selling 3 bottles of wine for 10 quid. And I thought, bloody hell, that'll last me 2 nights. That's 5 a night for my drinking. But it wasn't long before I was actually drinking 3 bottles of wine. Yeah. So, and then I started putting on loads of weight. And then I Googled what alcohol has the least calories, and it up vodka, right? And it was like, I don't like spirits. So I bought a half bottle of vodka and had it with tonic. And it's actually, that's a different feeling of being pissed. That's totally not that kind of like bloated feeling. So then I started buying a bottle of vodka, and I'll get through that by 9 o'clock. Because I was like a fast drinker. And then so I started buying litres. And I remember I started clocking the bottle in the morning, and I thought, oh, look, I've got that much left. It could be that much in the bottom of the litre. And I think, actually, I've had an easy night. I'm all right now, and kid myself that I could get in the van and be okay to drive and get through the day. You know, and at weekends, it started getting worse because I was buying pint cans of Stella as well, and starting midday because the football was on and stuff like that.
Exactly the same as me,
You know, and like then I become a recluse, because if I went out, I had to rein it in, so I didn't even bother going out in the end. So, you know, for years, I just had a lock-in on my own, a party for one.
Yeah, that was my favourite drink in the end. Sad, isn't it?
Vodka.
Yeah, just being on my own. That was my best drink. You know, I can be on my own. No one can bother me, and I can just, you know, sit in the dark and have a drink. It's sad, but vodka as well. I mean, actually, things got so bad for me at one point, I actually started throwing blood up, which is really nasty. And I thought, that's all right, it's not too bad. And I started mixing vodka with milk.
Oh, I've never done that.
Now, that is a horrible place to be when you're drinking vodka and milk, because it tastes vile.
Why did you do that?
Well, because I'm throwing up blood.
Oh, right.
And I think I had esophagitis, so it was all inflamed.
Yeah,
I don't know. I had a lot going on.
Yeah.
That I thought the milk would somehow like be some kind of antacid. But I don't know. I was trying to self-diagnose a way through it.
The things we do, eh?
I mean, yeah, not great. Obviously, you've become a bit of a brand, to put it lightly. And it's like when I met you today, I almost didn't call you David. I almost said, "Hi, sober Dave." What does it mean to you to be sober now? What does that word mean to you?
It's a really good question, because I started off as sober Dave, and I thought sober just meant giving up drinking.
Same.
But I realised that being sober is the beginning, and the rest is probably 80% is working on yourself, because I started drinking when I was 14, and that's when my emotional development stopped, really, because I didn't grow emotionally,
Yeah.
I just stunted it. And when I stopped drinking, I quite often compare it to coming out of a life sentence in prison, where I've been institutionalized into something for so long that I don't know any difference, right? And I came out of those prison gates when I was 54 and stood there, and I thought, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my identity is. It's like, you're an actor, so it's like being in a soap for years and years and years. And then they write you out, and then you think, I don't actually know who I am, because I played this role. I was Glugs. I was Glugs because I would glug the beer down. And I thought, I either go back in where it's my comfort zone, or I push forward. And I realised then that I needed to educate myself. I needed to work on my self-esteem, because I used to look in the mirror and literally loathe myself. I used to talk to myself like a lunatic, and say, you're an absolute piece of shit. What have you done to your life? Bearing in mind that when I was in my late teens, early 20s, I had a good job. I was good at sport. I was good weight, fit as a fiddle. And there was this 54-year-old man looking in a mirror with bags, 21 stone, couldn't even put my socks on without being out of breath.
Yeah.
And
not like today, looking very dapper, sir, I must say.
Well, yeah, I've turned my life around, mate.
Sure.
And so the word sober is, I imagine a lot of people would relate it to stopping drinking. But for me now, that was the beginning of it. That was the first 20% of my turnaround.
Yeah.
And, I've done so much since. I really have. Like, I've educated myself. I've changed my whole mindset. I was a really negative person when I was drinking, and I realised that it was a reflection of how I felt about myself. So I was really judgmental. I was quite an angry man, quite bitter, and I just didn't like that version of me.
Yeah.
And working on myself has changed.
Yeah.
It's changed everything.
I think that dry drunk thing is obviously something that's debated and can be quite controversial and spark a lot of opinion. But I know for me, if I'm not kind of working some kind of program around my recovery, that can start to happen, and I can start behaving. It's like I'm drinking, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So that kind of emotional sobriety stuff I have to be careful of. And I think sometimes for me as well, it's I find the ism in alcoholism for me can show up in other areas. I don't know if you noticed that. Like, one for me is work. I have to be really, really careful. I noticed a few months ago, my wife's talking to me and I got my laptop and I'm like, I'll respond. I've just got one more email.
Yeah.
And then getting up in the morning and kind of reaching for the laptop as if it was a bottle.
Yeah, it's almost transferring the addiction, isn't it? I think it's like a dopamine thing, because, there's a huge thing out now about a lot of addicts have ADHD.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we all know with ADHD there's a lack of dopamine. And for me, I've had a genetic test. My dopamine receptor doesn't work. And I think that's why it's called glugs, because I would have one drink and that would mean like a starting pistol. I can never have one drink and then a cup of tea. That one drink said to my brain, right, you're on it now until you fall over.
It's going great. I've got dopamine and I'm lacking it.
Yeah, but I was then because my dopamine receptor doesn't work, the dopamine would go straight away. So there could be someone that would sip on their wine or their pint for half an hour, and after 3 minutes I've drunk mine and I'm up at the bar again, right? Because I'm always chasing the dragon.
Yeah.
Hence why I drank, in the end, a litre of vodka. So when I stopped drinking, it's like, where do I get this dopamine hit from? And this might sound controversial, Ollie, but there's nothing to me personally than me getting pissed. But what I was trying to do in the beginning was try and match something to compare. And I realised after a while there isn't anything. So for me to find that out really helped me.
Yeah.
Because I've climbed some mountains. I've done a 10K with someone in the media. I've done, cycle. I did do that cycle ride to Paris in the end because I lost weight and that. But, my podcast, my book and all that. And none of it was like, so me finding that out really helped me because it's like, don't compare. Comparison is a nightmare.
Yeah,
right? It just doesn't help you. So I know it sounds a little bit weird for me to say that, but it really helped me to not compare anything else to me getting drunk because I was on a completely different planet when I was drunk. So I got into a bit of a online shopping thing.
Right.
It was trainers.
Oh my God, I've gone through this.
Yeah, Nike trainers.
Yeah,
I downloaded the app so I would sign up and I would get the notifications that this is, and I remember buying these trainers and they weren't even my size. I thought, but I want them. So it's the whole process of ordering them, ordering them, waiting for them in the post, receiving them. And once I opened the box, then my dopamine, it went down.
Right.
And put them in the cupboard and then start looking again.
Yeah.
And I had to really rein it in because I thought,
well, the pursuit of dopamine releases more dopamine than the actual thing, doesn't it? That ties in.
Yeah. And so after a while, when I thought, people say, you got more money when you stop drinking. As I had less money because I was buying all these trainers.
I think Robin Williams talked about that once when he was asked about alcoholism, that he'll wake up in the morning and he's gone on, online and bought all these things.
And don't remember eBay purchases. I bought a Porsche. What?
Yeah, exactly. That would be the big one. So if you're listening to this and, you want to start a Trainers Anonymous, come
I'm the man.
Us up. Also, while we're here, I want to give a shout out to my mate Matthew Jones, who runs a podcast called Life After Jazz Hands. Go check it out now, particularly if you're into performing arts. I just want to give him another shout out at this moment. Going back a little bit to the dopamine thing, is this where Sober Dave really comes in? Obviously you've amassed a large following. You give back an awful lot. I know you mentioned about the 12 steps not being for you, and obviously that's completely fine. But I do wonder as well if there is a bit of step 1 and 12 going on. So by step 1, I mean, the first word of step 1 is, we admitted we were powerless. So this idea of getting a community, you're massive about the community. And then step 12 is all about giving back. Even though you might not have done the other 10, you've sort of bedposted them a bit, because you're massively about community and about giving back as well. Yeah,
I mean, I think the 12 steps, there's some elements that are useful in life anyway.
Yeah.
Apologising, I've seeked out people to apologise for past behaviours and that.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, community is essential in my eyes. I have a couple of groups that I run, and I can see the change in people that join the community, and we all support each other and hold each other up without shame and judgment.
Yeah.
And giving back, of course, that makes you feel good. That gives you a dopamine hit. But, I hear success stories from years ago, right in the beginning of my sobriety. They say, do you know what? Hearing your story has really supported me, listening to your podcast and that. And of course it makes you feel good. I'd be lying if I didn't feel that, but it almost feels like now it's just what I do, I try not to have any ego around it. I quite often take myself back to that beach in Eastbourne and I sit there. And
how do you do that? Just because, it's hard with social media, isn't it? I mean, it must be difficult I say this to actors that I have on as well that, have got these big careers and they get awards. Like, how do you stay grounded? Because as your social media is swelling up and your podcast is always in the sort of top 10 range of podcasts, because I know for me, sort of getting humble is something that I have to keep going back to, because if my ego gets too big, I'm worried I'm going to run into a pub. Is that something that you're mindful of? Because you're an incredibly lovely man, very down to earth. I just wondered how you navigate that, or is it just something that comes naturally to you?
It's a good one. I think initially I did have a bit of ego.
Yeah.
I mean, I was on TV for a few years on that 6-minute makeover. I had a lot of ego in there. I was the main carpet guy on there, and working with Peter Andre, who's a fantastic man.
Yeah,
he's a great guy. But I think stopping drinking has humbled me. Full stop.
Same.
Right, I'm less judgmental, as I said, and I feel so genuinely grateful that I've managed to do it. And it's not hard work for me to be like this, to be humble, because I don't want to be one of these influencers that are out there, come on, let's do. I want to genuinely be someone that can feel the pain of someone that they're going through it now, because otherwise I lose that.
Yeah.
And this is why I go back to the place in Eastbourne, and I go on my own for the weekend, and I visit the places that I visited on that weekend at Easter 2018. And I sit in that pub with a lime and soda. I go on the pit, I sit on the beach as it's getting dark, and it really brings me back down to earth. And I can really feel how far I've come since then. But it also grounds me to know how people are feeling now, because every single week someone new comes along and they say, look, Dave, I'm really struggling. What can I do? And whatever, So I think that's what grounds me. And I just feel lucky to be alive, because I think by drinking litres of vodka every single night, well, that wasn't going to be much longer for me. My health was shocking. And I mean, like blood pressure, the doctor thought I was going to drop down dead. Yeah. God knows what was going inside with my liver at the time and stuff. And I just feel so lucky that I've escaped.
Rock bottom really was a school for you, literally. I mean, I don't mean to be cheesy about the title of my podcast, but it sounds like going back to that beach in Eastbourne.
But the irony was that wasn't the time I stopped drinking. I was studying to be a counsellor. And when I got back on the Wednesday, on the Thursday night, I had an exam. There's a physical exam in front of instructors, right, to be a counsellor.
Yeah.
And I failed miserably.
Yeah.
They were literally, I could see them in the corner of my eyes shaking their heads kind of like this, like, what the hell is this? And that was another rock bottom. And then my mum died in the October. That was a rock bottom. It's a string of things that carried on. And so on the 7th of January 2019, it looks like I just stopped drinking overnight. They call it spontaneous sobriety, right? But it wasn't that. And I want listeners to think about this, that if you're asking yourself these questions now regularly, I need to sort my drinking out. I need to address it. Whatever you're drinking, it's not all about a litre of vodka. It'll be a couple of glasses of wine a day. But if you're feeling like it's affecting your life in any way, and you are not sleeping, you're feeling anxious, it's causing problems indoors, you're not being there for your kids and that's where I was, because I kept asking myself that question, what am I doing? I need to sort it out. And that went on for months. And then eventually, when that text came through, it was almost like the time. Do you know what I mean?
This, I mean, obviously with it being dry January, or it's about to be, depending on when you're watching or listening to this, I'd love to know your take on 0% beers and wine. I think it's a very interesting space. I just wondered for you personally, like David, do they play a part in your routine for you personally?
They used to.
Right, interesting.
It's interesting, right? So I tried them.
Yeah.
I was a bit nervous, but I tried them and they were okay.
Yeah.
But it's ironic now that I rarely have them.
Yeah.
And that's not for any particular reason. I might, if I'm going out for dinner, I might have one beer. That's the irony as well, was that I can have one now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But of course, there's no real dopamine from the drug there. I'm just enjoying the drink.
Yeah.
And I often say to people, look, if they don't trigger you, then that's fine, because they can actually help. If someone's going for their cravings, or they got a trigger and whatever, an alcohol-free drink can help. But even if the thought makes you feel nervous or the taste or anything, avoid them, especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right, just be clean and go for a few weeks without anything.
Yeah.
And then, you know, if you want to explore after that and you have one and it's, oh, I don't know, I feel like I drink now, just avoid them.
Yeah.
But I haven't got any problem. People quite often ask about the 0.5s, you know, well, there's alcohol in it, but it's a trace. It's literally a trace.
Same as probably a banana or some other things.
Yeah. So I'm open to it, but also I'm very mindful of other people that it could be.
Yeah.
You know,
I guess maybe the space I work in, with it being in rehab, and it's usually quite extreme alcohol use disorder. I just say to people, give it a year and then make a decision. But obviously you're working in a space where your clients are sober curious, you've got grey area drinking, and I think particularly for those spaces, or maybe a kind of mild alcohol use disorder, I can see how they could be hugely helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, and this isn't projecting onto anybody else, I'm really terrified of it tasting like the real thing. So that's why I haven't gone anywhere near it. You know, when people say to me, oh, you know, the zero Guinness tastes just like Guinness, I'm like, yeah. And I think for me personally as well, it's a little bit like sort of saying to someone, you know, would you do some 0% cocaine? I can't
I
really
can understand that.
But having said all of that, I'm massively, massively happy that this space is growing, because the health of our nation and everyone's health in general is only going to get better. It's just for me personally, for whatever reason, it scares the living daylights out of me. But it's brilliant that it's a tool for a lot of people, and I can see why as well.
It is, you know? And it's a huge money-making thing for the big corporates as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's why they're pushing it out there. But hey, you know, like you see the rugby now, and it's all over there, 0% Guinness. So I think it's making it more accepted these days, you know, that it's okay. You know, I think that's the start of something, you know, someone saying, look, and it doesn't even have to be for people who have got a problem with drinking. They could have a big meeting in the morning or, you know, something going on in their life and they think, I just don't want to drink. So, you know, it's not just there for people with a problem, is it? It's for people.
Absolutely. I think, you know, particularly in those spaces like Sober Curious and the wellness space, the grey area, I mean, what a massive tool they are. Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, I mean, weirdly, I've got no problems with mocktails personally, because they just taste like fruit juice.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, I remember my wife and I were in Turkey a few years ago, and we sort of went to this daytime club, you know, and it was really nice just having a really fancy drink. And sometimes late at night, I want something that feels more adult, you know, if I'm at a wedding or something, sort of like ginger ale or just something that feels a bit more, you know, grown up.
Yeah.
Also, I was just kind of curious, you know, with people that might be on this dry January thing. I know one thing that people are quite worried about is the why question. So you're out in a pub or a party and someone says, what are you drinking? And maybe you say, I'm having a zero beer or a Diet Coke. Now, in my experience, people don't tend to ask why much anymore. They just kind of go, fair enough. But if someone does ask you why you're not drinking, it probably doesn't happen now because you're sober, Dave. But what did you say early on when people asked you, why aren't you drinking? What was your go-to answer?
Well, I just used to say because I was a nutcase, you know, like I was a madman, you know, I had no fear about telling the truth. But I think for a lot of people, they don't really need to explain, because I think we're more aware now, even now I'm 6 years on.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. How alcohol can affect your mental health so much, you know, and I think not over explaining is a good thing. Just say I'm on a well-being kick, you know. There's huge evidence now about how it affects the symptoms of menopause now. You know, it absolutely intensifies the symptoms of menopause. A lot of people are put on antidepressants. They go to the doctors and they're saying, look, I'm feeling quite low. And as far as I know, not many doctors actually go to the root of that and say, well, let's start with your life. How are you? Like, what does your life look like? Because they haven't got time to go into it, right? They don't say, how much are you drinking? They just say, well, let's put you on a diet. And I'm a witness to that. You know, I was put on antidepressants, and obviously, you know how much I was drinking. If it had said, well, you're drinking a litre of vodka, that's why you're depressed, then Bob's your uncle. Yeah. Right? But he didn't. And then I went back and said, I'm still depressed. And he, yet again, still didn't say to me, oh, are you drinking? No, he doubled them up. And that was just before Eastbourne. And I could have easily died in Eastbourne. Like I was literally psychotic, right? So the mental health angle is a really big thing these days, like depression. And just for people listening, it's like, don't over explain. You don't have to justify why you just say you're having a break. It doesn't make you feel very good at the moment. It's affecting my sleep. I just feel anxious.
I used to just say I'm retired when people ask me.
Yeah,
I'm retired. They're like, what do you mean? Well, retired. I used to do it. I don't anymore.
But when you say that, it leaves them a bit stumped, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But when you say, I think I was becoming an alcoholic, I don't know, then it's open. It opens it up for a debate then. And they go, well, you're not too bad. Go on, have a drink. Go on. It's Christmas. Have a beer. Yeah. You're all right. You can have one. And we all know, like, we can't.
Yeah.
When we get to our stage and that, and
I think language is so important.
It's massive.
Sorry to interrupt. About, for some people saying, I'm an alcoholic in recovery. I've got one friend who finds that really empowering. Personally, I would have found that the opposite.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget, I got an actor friend and he was at the National and we met in the bar afterwards and, someone said, oh, you're not drinking? He went, no. And they asked him why and he stood up on the table. And he went, because I'm a chronic alcoholic.
Brian Blessed, was it?
Yeah, I'm a chronic alcoholic. It was kind of, it was a bit Brian Blessed, yeah. And I just looked at him and everyone laughed and I was like, wow, talk about owning it.
Yeah. Well, I owned it when I said to that guy, I don't drink anymore, right?
Yeah.
Because if you say, if you've given up and someone says, like, do you want to drink? I don't drink. You don't even have to say any more.
Yeah.
I don't drink.
Yeah.
And it's a real firm statement. And they go, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I feel the pressure of relapse, I guess, like everyone in recovery, in the sense that I know it's going to let myself down, it's going to let all my family down, and it would be a terrible thing. I just wondered, does it feel a bit of extra pressure because of your platform? Being sober Dave. I mean, does it make it easier or harder? Because you're kind of like, you're really setting your stall out, aren't you?
I think it's helped me, to be honest, because I'm accountable. But to be fair, and I know you can't say I will never drink again, but I'm bloody confident I will never drink again. I've gone through some stuff in my sobriety that if there's anything that would have given me the chance to drink again, I would have done, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And I feel I just don't want to drink again.
Yeah.
And that I say it with all my heart. I do not want to go back there.
Yeah.
Where I was. I do not want to taste alcohol. I don't want to feel how I did. Yeah. I've genuinely moved on. And I always compare it to leaving a toxic relationship, a narcissistic relationship. Yeah, that's absolutely how I frame it, right? And 6 years on, why would I want to go back there?
Well, a hair of the dog is a little bit like being in a toxic relationship. You get beaten up, you've got blood coming out of your nose, and then they come up to you and go, come with me, I'll make you feel better.
Yeah.
It's as brutal as that.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Yeah. And you go, okay then.
All right then. And it's all right for a minute. They give you a cuddle and then they just punch you in the face.
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Ugh, horrible.
Yeah.
Talking about old Dave, I don't know if you don't mind. I mean, I'm going to be a bit brutal and call it drunk Dave versus, here we go, drunk Dave versus sober Dave. Who's going to win? I'm just curious about the old you versus the new you. I mean, maybe there's not such a huge transformation. Maybe sober Dave is the authentic real you, which it is. And drunk Dave was just kind of like, all of this other stuff added on top. I mean, I often say that in my own recovery that I haven't changed. I've just become my authentic self and let go of stuff.
Yeah.
But I guess in terms of behavior or outlooks or philosophy, maybe certain things that you were like that are very different today. I appreciate that's quite a difficult question.
No, it isn't. I'm quite different, in fact. We were talking about emotional sobriety earlier. When I stopped drinking, I thought I was this version when in fact I wasn't that version at all. It was such an act. I was a massive people pleaser. I had zero boundaries. I would do anything for anyone so they would like me. And when they wouldn't give me the kind of cheer afterwards that I'd helped them, I then didn't like them.
Yeah.
So I was that kind of bipolar personality. And I stopped drinking and I literally had no idea who I was. So I started to explore that. And now I'm a lot calmer. I'm a lot quieter, mate. I mean, like literally, I was like that Brian Blessed character walking into the pub. The doors would fling open and it would be, I'm here, Sober Dave. No, I wasn't then, was I? I was Glugs.
You were Glugs then.
Glugs, right? And people would go, hey, Dave's here, we're on it. But what they meant was, well, it's a cheap night. Because I drank so quick, I'd be buying double rounds all the time, right?
Sure.
But now I'm a lot more composed, and I'm older as well, so that's probably played a part. But I've learnt a lot about myself, but I've also educated myself. I'm a trauma-informed coach now, so I've learnt a lot about the nervous system, and I live a much calmer life now, and I'm happy in my skin, where before I just wasn't happy in my skin. I didn't even know what that looked like. I was just a drinker, living day to day. Financially day to day, getting up feeling like hell, and by 2 o'clock starting to feel better, to then after saying I'm not drinking tonight, going, we could have one. We all know that story. To then going round and round and round, and I'm just so content now in my life, genuinely.
Yeah, it's amazing. You talked about that sensitivity earlier. You can be a bit sensitive. I used to be very, very sensitive. I still am on occasion, but it is definitely dialed down. Is that something that you've noticed as well, that you're not as sensitive today?
Yeah, it is, because I've learned about it. And, being an HSP, highly sensitive person, to me, I always reframe things now. So in the old days when I was drinking, I was negative. People used to say to me, you're the most negative person I've ever met.
But that's changed, because I wouldn't have thought that at all meeting you.
Yeah, but I was. But at the time, I got really defensive, right? I was like, what are you talking about? I get up for work every day and I bring the money in and blah, blah, blah.
You think I'm negative? You wait till you see negative.
Yeah. But now I realise that I did frame everything in a negative way, because my life was so miserable. I felt miserable.
Yeah.
So I looked at life miserable, and everyone's out to get me and everything goes wrong for me.
It's
and
I've never to open a beer as well.
Yeah. And like nothing goes right. I'll kick a cup of tea over on the carpet and go, right, that's my day written off. And now it would be, well, I shouldn't have put it there, should I? And then clean it up and carry on. So I reframe things differently now. Of course I have the odd bad day in that, but it makes my life a lot easier now to look at things in a more positive way.
If you do have a bad day, have you got to kind of get to sort of go-to thing that you do, or do you just take a bit of time out and just kind of rest and just know that you'll naturally bounce back? I just wondered if you had anything in particular that you kind of lean on when things get a little bit more.
I had a bad day recently, and I've got incredible resilience now because I've got more patience. I've got more bandwidth.
Yeah.
And I literally said to my lovely girlfriend, right, I'm not going to text tonight. I'm going to turn the phone off and I'm going to watch a film on Netflix that you're in. And then...
Who's in?
You.
Am I in it?
Well, you can be if you like. I was just...
Brilliant. No, I'm glad. I've been waiting for a couple of things to go.
My old mate Ollie Mason's in this new blockbuster on Netflix tonight. And
I'll tell you what it is. I got a film I was in that I've been waiting to go on Netflix. So I actually thought it might have dropped.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, your eyes lit up.
It did light up. Yeah, I know.
But, I've got a beautiful little chihuahua, right, called Rose. And I turn the phone off.
Yeah.
And I'll sit and watch a film, escapism, and I just really look after myself, have a nice bit of food and have an early night. And I wake up in the morning and it's a new day. And I always start afresh every single day. I never carry what's happened the day before over.
Yeah, amazing.
And I start again, all fresh in that. And I go, right, let's go.
My wife and I have got this little routine that we've kind of dropped recently, but I want to get back. And we've made a promise that every time we get up in the morning, our feet hit the ground.
Yeah.
The first thing that comes out of our mouth is, today's going to be a great day.
Yeah. Start the day with intention.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah, I do.
We were talking about something slightly negative, but I want to turn it into a bit of a positive as we're unfortunately coming close to the end of our discussion, which is a real shame. But you said something earlier about what you wanted written on your gravestone when you were drinking. Do you mind reminding me what it was? And I mean, you were sort of joking maybe.
God.
But...
Yeah, I sort of romanticised it because I was almost in such a dark place that I romanticised my death, which is weird. And I remember a Beautiful South song, Oh Red Eyes. And,
brilliant song.
Yeah.
Beautiful South.
Beautiful South.
Yeah.
And we're actually going to see Paul Heaton soon.
Right.
And I remember a scene in a pub where there was him in a glass calling him into the glass, and he was sitting at the bar. And I really resonated to that when I was watching it, right? Yeah. But there's also a scene where all the landlords, and there's a line in the song, all the landlords from the district standing round by his grave.
Wow,
right?
You're right.
And I imagined there were no landlords in the end, though, because I drank on my own at home.
Mm.
But I visualised my gravestone as saying, he loved a beer, that boy. And I kind of, I don't know what I was doing really, but I romanticised my bloody headstone.
Yeah. I think it's such a chronic learning disorder, alcoholism, the way I see it, that it can, towards the end when it's getting really chronic and severe and maybe kind of end of life, that it can even go there, that it's like, yeah, you know, even if you're going to die, it's still going to be all right because you've got the drink. I sort of imagined people coming to the Royal Free Hospital where I used to always end up, you know, and sort of I'm going yellow and they'd sort of cry and bring me flowers, and I'd sort of drink a little bit of vodka and have a Librium. You know, it was just madness, you know, where it can take you.
Mm.
What would you like your gravestone to say now? What would it say?
Well, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Bearing in mind that I stopped when I was 54, I think it would say something like, proof that it's never too late to turn your life around.
Wow.
Because you drink for 40 years, it's quite easy to go, do you know what? I've had it anyway. Look, there's me being negative again when I was drinking, see? But I proved that actually it doesn't matter how old you are, you can turn your life around, because the last 6 years of my life have been absolutely incredible. And I feel better now and healthier now than I did in my 30s.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it would say that. And I want that to encourage anyone at any age to think about it and think, do you know what? What would I be capable of if I made some changes in my life? And that's not just booze, that's exercise, eating habits, you know, being more mindful, thinking about how you feel about yourself, what your self-worth looks like to you. You know, how do you genuinely feel about yourself? And if you go, not a lot, try and change it.
Yeah. Thank you ever so much, David, for coming down today.
Pleasure, mate. It's been a joy.
Honestly, it's been an absolutely brilliant hour, and it's absolutely flown.
Thank you.
Huge thanks to you. Guys, if you're watching or listening to this, please head to the show notes now. You will find a link to Dave's website, also his podcast, and lots of other resources. I really recommend the podcast, and if you're looking for any kind of one-on-one support and groups as well you run, just head to his website, and there's loads of details there. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit subscribe and give it a like. Drop us a comment. Really helps the algorithm. Share this with someone who you think might benefit from this conversation. Spotify, give us 5 stars. That would be great. I think I'm on 75 stars, so you can be number 71. That would be amazing. Also, Apple do the same. And as I've promised, and I've not let you down yet, I will see you in 2 weeks' time for a brand new episode. Best of luck through dry January. If we can have, help you in any way, any support, drop me a message via the podcast and I'll get back to you. And until then, look after yourself. And thanks for watching or listening.